The challenge enthusiasts are a community of highly dedicated players who complete difficult challenges in video games. On the challenge enthusiast website, there is a list of games that award points, where the more points something is worth, the harder it is. These games are then categorized into different tiers based on how many points they are worth, with the hardest being tier 5. I've never completed a tier 5 game before, which is why I decided to complete Open Hexagon. Open Hexagon is the spiritual successor to Super Hexagon, a game I beat for this channel back before I removed all my videos. The premise is simple: survive. When you start playing, a series of gates will approach the center where the arrow is. If the arrow touches a gate head-on, you'll die and have to retry. In Super Hexagon you have to survive for only 60 seconds, but in Open Hexagon it's dependent on the level. Just the first level has you surviving for 120 seconds. So from here the challenge is quite simple: beat every level. Open Hexagon has a series of levels that can be classified as either ranked or unranked. Ranked levels are the ones that are required for the challenge enthusiast objectives, meanwhile unranked levels are user-made levels, the tutorials, and Arcadia for some reason. Anyways, most of the levels are very akin to Super Hexagon, with a few new interesting concepts like a lot of different polygons other than hexagons, and some levels give you the ability to swap 180 degrees instantly. But for the most part, these levels aren't that bad. There are a few exceptions, however. The first level actually to give me a really hard time was Pi. It's a very simple level, you just need to survive for 60 seconds, but I was very stubborn and decided to beat it very early on. I beat Pi the day after I bought the game and had yet to get good at the gameplay loop of Open Hexagon. I was already super bad when it came to Super Hexagon, so this was a real patience test for me. Ultimately, this wouldn't have been really hard if I saved it for later, but my stubbornness is what lands a special highlight in this video. The next level to give me a lot of troubles was Bipolarity. This level you need to survive for 45 seconds, and the gimmick is that every opening is either on the left or the right of the last one. And every so often you have to do a 180 degree jump. Whenever you do this jump though, the color scheme inverts and the level starts spinning really fast, making it hard to read where you have to go next. This level was extremely challenging for me until I made a really crucial discovery. Every time the level is about to throw a 180 degree jump at you, the center hexagon inverts and the background flashes. Once I realized this, I had a much easier time with the level and I beat it within the same day. The next challenging level was Commando. This level never spins and relies entirely on your ability to read and react to the gameplay. You don't technically have to survive for a certain amount of time in Commando, you just need to reach level 7. Each level adds more sides to the polygon, so it gets harder and harder the longer you progress. Eventually I would just do a series of attempts in between other levels, and I eventually got the run I needed and beat it. Now these next two levels were absolutely horrid to try and beat, and I could choose either of them for being the hardest, but I will talk about them in the order I beat them. Apeirogon is a level name that brings me such content, such anger. In concept it's not that bad, it's honestly really similar to Hyperhexagonist from Super Hexagon. What made it impossible for me though was just how much faster it was. I couldn't follow it at all while trying to play it. Also, every 15 seconds the level decides to rotate at 1000 RPM for no reason, which killed me countless times. This isn't a problem with only Apeirogon, I should add. A lot of levels do this stupid spin actually, but in Apeirogon it made me livid. And to top it all off, I can't tell you how many runs would just die because I rolled a heptagon instead of a hexagon or a pentagon. In the end I beat it, so I can't stay mad at it forever, but this level was pure misery. Now last but not least we have Incongruence. This level has you survive for a whopping 90 seconds straight, which is completely insane. I would understand if it was an easier level, but this level is really hard. The concept is simple: every 15 seconds the level chooses a range of polygons to spawn, starting with 4 to 6. The level would then spawn these polygons at random, and you have to find the gap and weave through all sorts of different shapes. Some patterns are really nice, my favorites being 4 through 5, 4 through 6, and 5 through 6, but some patterns are completely ridiculous and unfair, like 5 to 9 or 6 to 10. The big problem with Incongruence though is that the level slowly starts to spin faster and faster the longer you last, eventually spinning at an absolutely rapid pace, making runs that roll a 6 to 10 at 75 seconds a lost cause. I pulled through though, and got through Incongruence and finally completed the... Okay, well, I probably shouldn't say I completed the game. This whole video I've only been talking about the base difficulties for every level. Unbeknownst to any of you, unless you've played the game before or are just aware, there are difficulty multipliers for each of these levels, and the game dev was very kind to put an achievement for each of these too. If it weren't for these, the game would only be 50 points. Beating every single level at the highest difficulty awards 170 points all on its own. That's more than the entirety of Geometry Dash, and that's 2 times more points as beating 50/20 mode. This is where the real challenge begins. Now, most levels are quite simple to beat, and while I was beating the base difficulties of these levels, I actually beat a lot of the max difficulty versions as well. Once again, however, there are a few levels that gave me a lot of trouble. I actually struggled to remember how hard a lot of these levels were. I beat most of the levels for this game back in 2022, and I did a few in 2023. I just ultimately found the gameplay loop very frustrating, and it bothered my eyes a lot. If y'all have seen me do level request streams before, you've probably heard me complain that some levels hurt my eyes a lot, and this game is no exception to that, but ultimately I just didn't really want to play it very much. Eventually though, I persevered through the game and ended up with what I called the big 3 remaining. Bipolarity Max, Apeirogon Max, and Incongruence Max. These 3 modes were so unbelievably difficult that no matter how many times I came back to the game, I just couldn't break through. That's when I decided I would take the game very seriously and finally conquer it once and for all. I would stop taking year-long breaks for the sake of boredom, and I would actually sit down for hour-long sessions and grind these levels until they were all done. That way I could finally claim a tier 5 completion. To start with, I'll just be upfront about Bipolarity Max. To this day, I still think that this level is too hard for me, and I've beaten it. The level moves so fast that I had an extremely hard time sight reading where to go, and when the flip would happen, I was just completely lost. Over my thousands of attempts, I could never get past 5 seconds because of just how impossible it was for me to read where to go. It even got to the point where I tried this super hard strategy where you just move 180 degrees without jumping, just so you don't trigger the rotation. When I ended up with these 3 levels left, I told myself, okay, I'm never going to beat Bipolarity Max. I could beat every other level and never beat this because it's actually impossible. Because of that, I will need to grind this level non-stop until I beat it, otherwise there's no point in playing anything else. And with that, I started grinding. And let me tell you, I told myself this after I beat the 4th to last level, Euclidean Plane Crash. I beat that on August 14th, 2024. It took me until September 12th, 2024 to beat Bipolarity. I had to grind the level for a month straight to beat this. Let me just say that this level, without a doubt, is the hardest ranked level in all of Open Hexagon, period. Playing this level was pure misery because I could never convince myself that I was improving. I would get runs that would get very far, but most of the time I would just lose at 7 to 8 seconds. This level only required me to survive for 30 seconds, and it took me 9 hours of in-game time to do it. It took me 7,789 attempts to beat Bipolarity Max, and I don't think I can replicate it if I try. And on top of all this, I want you to just look at this level for a second. Look at what I was forced to focus on, what I was forced to lock in on. My eyes do not like flashing colors at all, and this level really irritated my eyes a lot. It was just not worth it. But I put so much time into this game, I couldn't just walk away with nothing. I'm sure if I had better eyes, I would have had an easier time on this level because it was just genuinely hard to focus on this level. Ultimately, this was the one that took the most out of me. When I finally beat Bipolarity, I have to admit, a very big wave of relief and excitement washed over me. To me, beating Bipolarity was flipping the switch saying, okay, all of this wasn't a waste of time. I've never been more motivated to play the game than I did then. The only levels that remained were Apeirogon and Incongruence, both of which required me to survive for 45 seconds. The same day I beat Bipolarity, I got 42 and 34 respectively on these levels, and I could tell that the end was in sight. The first level to go down was Apeirogon. Still a shit level. It's actually even worse than before because the game dev didn't playtest it or something, I don't know. But these spiral patterns are so inconsistent and I hate them with all of my being. This level is my least favorite in the game, full stop, period, no question. I don't have any reflection to say about this level other than thank God I never have to play Apeirogon again. Ever. And last but not least, Incongruence. Again, with this level there's a lot of hoping for good patterns. From my experience, if your max is ever 8 or higher, you're unlikely to pass. So I just had to get consistent at the beginning. This level is just about getting as many rolls as you can until you get good patterns. And that's exactly what I did. Yes! I did it!
That was crazy. That was actually crazy.
Yes!
I walked back into my room and you're at 43 seconds.
Open Hexagon was a really frustrating game at times. Most of the levels were incredibly easy while others were just way too difficult. Sometimes it felt like the achievement times were completely ridiculous, like Incongruence 90 seconds? I think one of the top players in the game chose the completion times for the achievements, but I could be wrong. But if it is true, that would make sense why they were so bad. In the end, the game is very repetitive, and I'm just glad I'm able to move on. By doing all of these levels, I was awarded 220 points for Challenge Enthusiasts, earning me my first Tier 5 completion, and netting me A rank for having over 1,000 points. As for the future Challenge Enthusiast content, I'm sure a lot of you noticed my videos disappeared at some point last year. This was a more personal thing with me just hating my voice, and I hated hearing it in those videos. And I don't plan to ever make them public again. I'll continue making more progress on the website, and to those who missed those videos, I'm sorry. Maybe one day I can remake them for the sake of having the whole journey, but for now I've decided to just continue my Challenge Enthusiast journey with this video as the starting point. Anyways, that's all. Thank you for watching, and I'll hopefully have more Challenge Enthusiast content to share soon. Bye bye.